Why LIV Golf might not survive 2026. 4 years ago, LIV Golf launched with more money behind it than any sport had ever seen in a single move. Enough money to poach major champions overnight. Enough money to blow apart 100 years of golf tradition in one summer. Right now, in 2026, that same league is being sued by one of its own vendors over an unpaid bill. Its CEO won't guarantee that its own season finale will happen as scheduled.
If you ask me that if we were managed very, very tightly, I would say absolutely. Can this be challenging? Absolutely.
And the fund that built the entire operation, a fund with more money than most countries, has quietly said it's done paying after this year. So here's the question nobody in professional golf really wants to say out loud. Is the richest golf league ever built about to run out of money? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how it got here and whether LIV Golf actually makes it to 2027. If you're new here, we dig into the business side of sports nobody else is covering. Hit subscribe because this story is nowhere near finished. Let's start with how big this thing actually got. LIV Golf launched in 2022, funded by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, one of the largest sovereign wealth funds on the planet. The pitch was simple: shorter events, no cut, guaranteed money, a team format built for a completely different kind of fan. And it worked, at least on the surface. Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, eventually John Rahm, for a contract reportedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars on its own. Estimates put the total Saudi investment in LIV Golf at more than $5 billion since it launched. Overnight, clubhouses across the golf world were having the same conversation. Players who'd spent decades chasing major championships inside the traditional tour system were suddenly walking away from it entirely for checks bigger than most of them would have earned in a decade of regular prize money. It wasn't just disruptive to a lot of longtime golf fans. It felt like watching the sport's entire value system get rewritten in real time. $5 billion. That's not a marketing budget. That's closer to a small country's GDP. And it's the kind of money that doesn't just build a golf tour, it starts a war. Lawsuits flew in both directions. The PGA Tour suspended every player who defected. LIV countersued, alleging an illegal monopoly. For a while, it looked like the entire sport might end up settled in a courtroom instead of on a golf course. Eventually, the two sides announced a framework to end the fighting and explore some kind of combined future. Years later, that framework still hasn't turned into an actual merger. The two tours are technically at peace. They are not, in any real sense, one golf. By 2026, LIV had grown into a 14-event global season, spread across multiple continents, playing 72 holes instead of the 54 it started with, and capped off by a season-ending team championship. From the outside, it looked like a league that had made it, a real, permanent fixture in professional golf. From the inside, the cracks were already showing. Here's the detail that changes everything else in this story. The Public Investment Fund, the well that's been funding all of this from day one, has indicated it will not continue funding LIV Golf beyond the 2026 season. Read that again. The entire foundation LIV was built on is scheduled to disappear at the end of this year. And here's why that matters so much more for LIV than it would for almost any other sports league. LIV's business model was never built to pay for itself. No cut means every player gets paid for 4 rounds, whether they're leading or 40 shots back. Guaranteed contracts worth hundreds of millions run for years, regardless of results. Purses dwarf almost every event on the regular tour. Add international travel, team infrastructure, and concerts built into every single stop. and you get an operation that doesn't just need a lot of money once, it needs a lot of money every year, indefinitely, just to keep the doors open. The bet was always that sponsorships, media rights, and a growing fan base would eventually close that gap on their own. 4 years in, the reporting increasingly suggests that gap hasn't closed anywhere near fast enough. LIV's CEO, Scott O'Neill, is now reportedly trying to raise around $300 million from outside investors just to keep the league running into next year. This isn't a scrappy startup looking for its first round of funding. This is a 4-year-old, 14-event global golf league suddenly having to go find new money on the open market because the money that built it in the first place is walking away. And when a company's financial foundation gets shaky, it doesn't stay hidden for long. It starts leaking out through small, visible cracks. This year, those cracks have been showing up one after another. Crack number one, the schedule. LIV Golf Louisiana, originally planned for June, was canceled outright. Then the league went almost 7 weeks without playing a single event before returning to action in England. 7 weeks of silence for a tour that's supposed to be building momentum every single week of its season, at a moment when every week of silence is a week of questions instead of headlines. Crack number two, the tech. Earlier this year, LIV quietly killed Any Shot, Anytime, the interactive broadcast feature that let fans follow every single group on the course LIV. They pulled it right before the South Korea event and refunded subscribers, saying they were reviewing operations. Here's where it gets worse. The company that built that streaming technology, a Canadian firm called Moby Systems, turned around and sued LIV Golf in federal court. Their claim, LIV failed to pay over $800,000 in licensing fees, plus another $100,000 in usage fees, on a contract that was supposed to run through the end of 2026. All in, Moby is seeking more than $1.1 million in damages, saying LIV effectively walked away from the deal with 6 events still left to go. A league backed by billions of dollars dragged into federal court over roughly $1 million unpaid bill. On its own, that's almost a rounding error. But think about what it actually tells you. If a league with this much capital behind it is falling behind on invoices to one vendor, how many others are quietly waiting on that same phone call? And here's a small detail that says a lot on its own. LIV's own CEO hasn't held a single pre-tournament press conference since the league's first U.S. event of the season back in May. At the exact moment questions about the tour's future are getting louder, the man running it has gotten quieter. But it's not just the money people are watching, it's the players too. And this is where the story stops being about spreadsheets and starts being about people's careers. Patrick Reed, one of the names who helped define LIV's early years, left the league after the two sides couldn't agree on a contract extension. He becomes eligible to play the PGA Tour again after August 25th, 2026, when a founding era LIV player chooses to walk rather than re-sign. That's not just a roster move, that's a message. He's not the only sign. Some players simply weren't retained by their own teams heading into the season and haven't landed anywhere else. Whole franchises got rebranded, in some cases entirely. Stinger GC became Southern Guards GC. Ironheads GC became Korean Golf Club, rebuilt around an all-Korean roster. Smash GC quietly renamed itself entirely ahead of a single event. When a league keeps renaming its own teams mid-project, that's not branding. That's a league still trying to figure out what it is. And then there's the partnership that really stings. The Asian Tour, a circuit LIV had leaned on for years, wasn't just some side arrangement. Reports say it was central to a planned reboot for the league, a strategy built around partnering with respected tours, developing a pipeline of players, and finally getting LIV golfers access to the world ranking points they've been locked out of since day one. This year, the Asian Tour walked away from LIV and announced a new alliance instead. Not with LIV, with the PGA Tour. The tour LIV was built to destroy. That didn't just cost LIV a partner, it undercut the entire plan for what came next. For the players still under contract, it's an uncomfortable spot. Some would clearly rather be somewhere else. But they're locked into agreements with a league whose future is genuinely uncertain, quietly hoping the business side gets sorted out before their own deal runs out. So how does this season actually end? On paper, it ends with a celebration. LIV's 2026 calendar closes with Indianapolis in late August, then the season finale, this year branded the Aramco LIV Golf Michigan Team Championship, set for August 27th through the 30th at the Cardinal at St. John's Resort outside Detroit. It's the same site that hosted last year's finale, where John Rahm's team, Legion 13, beat out Bryson DeChambeau's Crushers GC in a dramatic two-hole playoff to win it all. That's the kind of moment LIV was built to sell. Big names, real stakes, a finish nobody saw coming. This year comes with a new title sponsor for the occasion, and that new sponsor is where this story gets almost poetic. Aramco, Saudi Arabia's state oil giant, is putting its name on LIV's biggest event of the year at the exact moment reports say the fund that built LIV in the first place is pulling back. Is that a sign of continued Saudi commitment or a naming rights deal painted over a shakier foundation? LIV hasn't said much publicly. You can draw your own conclusion. Here's the part that should genuinely worry LIV fans, though. Earlier this year, the league's own CEO wouldn't guarantee that all four of the season's closing events would even happen as planned. Read that again, too. The person running the league couldn't promise his own league's finale would take place. So step back and look at the whole picture. A funding pledge with an expiration date, a CEO quietly fundraising while running a full season out front, a canceled event, a killed product, a vendor lawsuit in federal court, a founding player walking away, teams renamed mid-season, a key partner defecting to the rival tour, and a season finale nobody in charge will fully guarantee. None of that means LIV Golf disappears tomorrow. Leagues survive messier years than this one, and $300 million, as wild as it sounds, isn't an impossible number for a sport that's already proven it'll spend at a scale nobody thought was realistic. There's also a version of this story where LIV doesn't disappear, it just shrinks. Fewer events, smaller purses, a tighter roster, maybe finally real progress on that merger framework with the PGA Tour that's been sitting unfinished for years. A quieter, smaller LIV, folded partially into the tour it once tried to replace, wouldn't be a dramatic collapse. It would just be an admission that the original plan, spend without limit and outlast the competition, never quite worked the way it was supposed to. But if that new money doesn't show up or doesn't show up in time, the questions get a lot bigger than one lawsuit. What happens to a player like Bryson DeChambeau? The closest thing LIV has to a signature star if the league backing him can't fund a full season next year. What happens to the players locked into multi-year contracts with a league that might not be able to pay them? What happens to a talent pool that spent 4 years positioning itself as a real rival to the PGA Tour if that rival simply runs out of runway? What happens to the broadcast partners, the sponsors, and the host cities that built plans around a 2027 season that might not exist? And what happens to a sport that spent the better part of 4 years being pulled in two directions if one of those directions just stops? If LIV Golf doesn't make it past 2026, it won't be a footnote. It'll go down as one of the most expensive experiments in the history of professional sports, one that had every advantage money could buy, and still might not have been enough. Whether it gets there is still an open question. And right now, LIV Golf doesn't seem to have the answer either. If you made it this far, you clearly care about where golf is headed, so do us a favor. Hit like, subscribe for more deep dives like this one, and drop a comment telling us what you think happens to LIV Golf. Does it survive? Does it get bought out? Does it fold before the year is even over? We read every comment, so let us know down below.